OpenAI announced that they are backing a movie called Critterz, which will be an AI-generated animated full-length feature film designed to show Hollywood that AI can cut costs and timelines without cutting creativity.
What if AI didn't just help you design, but actually ran parts of your creative business for you? Adobe has just announced the general availability of its new AI agents, specialized digital workers that automate tasks across Photoshop, Illustrator, Acrobat, and beyond.
What if you could replace all your recruiters with an AI voice agent and increase job starts by 18% and 30-day retention by 17%?
Anthropic just rolled out the ability to create and edit Excel sheets, Word documents, PowerPoint slides, and even PDFs directly in chat.
What if the internet had a price tag for training data for AI models?
Is their training on copyrighted materials without the author's consent okay? And it turns out the answer is maybe.
What if the root cause of AI hallucinations isn't the model's inherent architecture, but just the way we train them? Annie, I know you're a movie fan. I think you like some animated movies. We talked about K-pop Demon Hunters. Are you ready for a fully AI-generated animated movie? Is this in your future? Are you ready for it?
Well, you are not wrong. I love animated movies. I feel like they're always so much fun. I think I'm ready for an AI generated one. That sounds interesting. Tell me why you asked.
OpenAI is hoping you are. They've announced that they are backing a movie called Critterz, which will be an AI-generated animated full-length feature film designed to show Hollywood that AI can cut costs and timelines without cutting creativity. So Critterz coming soon to, I don't know how soon or to where, but like Critterz the movie coming AI-powered.
It's fully made by AI. Tell me how it actually is going to work.
No, it's not fully made by AI. And that's probably a good example for our audience of integrating AI into workflow. So here's what we know. The team aims to complete the film in like 9 months with a budget of under $30 million. So for context, traditionally animated films take like 3 years and hundreds of millions of dollars because of all of the engineers and animators and all the software and hardware. So this will be a lot faster and a lot cheaper. OpenAI is supplying its tools and computing power, including GPT-5 and image generation models. Human actors still going to do the voicing, so no voicing by AI just yet. And even artists will create initial sketches, but the AI models will handle the heavy lifting of turning those sketches into real animations. So the creative lead, Chad Nelson, has actually been working on these characters for 3 years. Started with early iterations using Dolly, so we'll see. It's a little mixture of the human creativity and the AI acceleration, but that's the plan.
Where am I going to see it?
Theoretically, Cannes Film Festival 2026. So next year in
That's legit.
Cannes Lions. That's legit. You'll be able to see Critterz.
And is this going to be like, is Critterz going to be the official? Critterz actually seems like an appropriate name for something taking something over, but is this the actual start of AI taking over Hollywood?
I mean, I don't know how to do a shrug emoji on video podcast, but who knows? It's certainly an indication. And I think it's a great example for the audience of this kind of integration of human idea, like initial human sketches and ideas are there, but they're, accelerating the timeline to creativity. They're probably making it a lot easier to explore different directions with how fast they can go and lowering the budget, but still human voice actors. I mean, it's a lot of human AI collaboration. So I imagine that you will see, I don't know if this portends a fully AI generated script animated voiceover thing in the future. Probably somebody will push that, but we don't know. But I guess, when you saw the story, did you look up the pictures? These are cute little guys. Like I want to see the movie just because they look so cute.
I did. They are very cute little critters, and I'm not usually one to think that critters are cute, but these particular critters are pretty cute. So I would watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I for nothing else, I will certainly watch it for the AI story. But it seems like it could be. I mean, it looks fun. It looks fun.
All right. Well, let's stick on the creative stuff here. What if AI didn't just help you design, but actually ran parts of your creative business for you? Adobe has just announced the general availability of its new AI agents, which are essentially specialized digital workers that automate tasks across Photoshop, Illustrator, Acrobat, and beyond. So it's like taking the features and making it into a full creative team as opposed to just a set of tools for creative people to use.
Interesting. They're really leaning into this agent's name. Seems like everybody, if you're gonna have a new thing now, it's gotta be an agent.
Gotta be an agent.
Adobe's got their agents. How does this differ from, I know Adobe's been adding AI, whether it was like creative fill or content aware fill that they had and some of the Firefly generative AI. How does this differ from what they've been doing in the Gen AI space up to now?
So my understanding is that I have not actually used Firefly, but Firefly was about sort of generating creative assets. So create an image, create text, sample stuff, and then the human would have to go in and sort of make decisions about what to put and how to optimize it. But these are actually designed to be, as we said, agents that are more like a workflow co-pilot. So the design agent will automatically do the resizing, they'll reformat the graphics, they'll make it work across platforms, that type of thing. So, whereas before it might generate a picture and then a human had to go and make that picture work in all the different sizes and types, now it actually can say, okay, these are all the places you're going to use this picture. The agent can go through and sort of streamline it. So, it's sort of an interesting idea. And honestly, like, it's one of those things that I think could potentially be super delightful as the user. Because how annoying is it when you have to do the same thing over 5 times because you have 5 different platforms. So it's kind of a nice feature to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they're really going after the operational part of marketing. I mean, there's this kind of, if you think of marketing as this creative endeavor, creating a beautiful ad, the stuff that Steve Jobs always liked to talk about, the right message and whatever. But then there's just getting it out there, getting the right font on there, keeping the brand colors in line, getting it in different layouts for different vertical and horizontal and whatever. And so it sounds like they're really coming after the operating side of the marketing part of the business as opposed to just the creative tools, which is really where they're kind of best known.
Yeah, and I actually sort of love that because as I think about sort of deploying AI, I like the idea of deploying it more in operational type of use cases. So like enforcing policies, making sure you're, having stricter adherence to whatever your brand requirements are, making sure there's some consistency across platforms and let the humans do more of the creative push. I definitely think, there's some of this concern out there that AI is making us dumber. Well, if we keep doing creative stuff, we're not going to get dumber, right? But let it do the stuff that does make us dumber, like resizing things all day long is sort of mind numbing. Let AI do that. That's great, right? So I love this operational piece.
Yeah, particularly in this kind of marketing space, right? Like you're not talking about the feature film like Critters. You're going, oh, we've got an ad and we want to put it in LinkedIn and Facebook and Google and wherever, and we put it in a magazine and they're all different dimensions and whatever, and like and that's like a lot of work for somebody, or maybe not anymore. So it'd be also big for Adobe because if these AI tools are coming after some of the creative work, I mean, a lot of the stuff that these image editing tools are doing now, kind of what people used to do for Photoshop. I feel like you used to need Photoshop to Photoshop things. Now you don't need Photoshop. You just Nano Banana will Photoshop things for you without Photoshop. So leaning into the operation side, the automation of the entire end-to-end workflow probably makes a lot of sense for Adobe as well.
Yeah, it's so funny. It used to be that like as you got older, your young people in your life would help you with your tech, right? And I had this really funny experience recently where my niece, who is 18 and she is, really into journalism. And so she's pretty good with Photoshop. She asked me if I needed help with anything with Photoshop. And I was like, why would I need your help with Photoshop? I have AI tools. And so it was kind of a reversal. Like, she tried to step in and do the young person thing, helping out her elder with technology, and I was like, "Girl, I'm past you. I got AI." So, it was kind of
I
fun
love
turning
it.
of the
Usually
tables.
that story goes the other way. So it's
I
a nice
know.
reversal of roles.
Exactly.
Enjoy it while you can. I'm sure it won't last long 'cause you're gonna come back in a couple of weeks and have learned all the AI tools and you're gonna be behind the curve.
Yeah, no, it for sure will not last long. But the business play here for Adobe is pretty clear and pretty interesting to sort of keep up with some of the other players that have been disrupting this space. So things like Canva and Figma, which I'm a kind of a power user of both of those, two of my favorite tools. But so as seeing Adobe and sort of some of these bigger companies sort of expand their reach in the enterprise AI race is pretty interesting to see. And it'll be interesting to watch how it unfolds with sort of the incumbents versus the upstarts.
Yeah, Adobe's doing a good job. I mean, attempted to buy Figma, of course, famously, and that did not happen. And so, but I feel like they've done a good job as an incumbent leaning into this. But it will be interesting to see if they can actually build the kind of AI native tools. And I think that'll play out in so many industries, right? Can the Salesforces of the world put AI into their product before the next generation AI first company comes along and produces something that's able to replace that for a lot of companies? We will see.
We'll see.
While we're talking about automating workflows, here's a new one for you. What if you could replace all your recruiters with an AI voice agent and increase job starts by 18% and 30-day retention by 17%? Just replace the recruiters altogether.
That's sort of like a mind-boggling thing to think about. So we're talking about AI actually interviewing candidates like on voice, not just like screening resume and parsing data, actually having a conversation.
We are. So this was a live field experiment, 70,000 applicants comparing human-led interviews with AI voice-led interviews and a candidate's choice arm. So there were some that were assigned to one, some that were assigned to the other, and some that they let people pick. Do you want to be interviewed by the AI or the person? I don't. So this is a fascinating psychology experiment in and of itself right there. But here's what happened. The AI-led pass, so AI voice interviewers produced 12% more job offers, 18% more job starts. And that wasn't just offering more jobs, but 17% increase in 30-day retention, with 78% of candidates choosing the AI when given the option. So the majority of people actually preferring to be interviewed by AI versus a human. I don't understand that fully, but there it is. The candidates rated interview and recruiter quality similar across all of these. And transcript analysis suggested the AI interviewers elicited more hiring relevant information than human interviews. They were like better interviewers, at least in terms of getting out the kind of information that we say we want. So this was a fascinating set of results. And it seems like we need to just replace some recruiters. I hope the recruiting team's not listening. Don't get upset with me. But the data suggests that they can, these AI voice-led interviews can do just as good a job as human recruiters.
Yeah, this is really fascinating. I'm like have all the questions that you did, which is I think if I was given the choice, I'm always going to pick a human. What are you going to pick?
I would think a human, and I couldn't tell you why exactly. I don't know why I would pick a human, but I feel like that would be my choice. That's just maybe because we're old and your niece would pick the
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's because 'cause we're old, but I mean, but we're pretty, like, AI, interested people, but it's really interesting to me how many people took the AI as their choice, and reading some of the results, they were sort of interesting, promising results of things like reduction in, like, bias and stuff like that from some of the questions. So, maybe this is the way of the future, although it's hard for me to wrap my head around.
and I wonder if, I mean, you and I are in a particular point in our career. I wonder if there's a bias for people who have successfully gotten jobs they won in the past to like the old way, humans, and people who maybe are earlier in their career have some nervousness about bias or comfort with like, hey, I want the AI that seems like a fair, honest broker of a test where, we go, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But the old way worked pretty good for me. I got into jobs I wanted. So, I don't know if that's some of the bias that we're showing there in terms of our preference. But it was fascinating to see that people preferred this and then it was better at eliciting information, which was really fascinating. But not surprising. I mean, I've been in a lot of interviews where I got distracted, got taken off task. It was an interesting conversation. It'll be interesting to see, of course, longer term studies if these employees actually, I mean, 30-day retention is great, but longer term. And I think these were not the highest level employees. So we'll have to see if, when you move beyond kind of entry level employees that are a little easier to test for to a little more leadership type skills, what that turns into. But really fascinating set of results on this initial test, both in terms of people's choices and the results we see from the AI taking the lead.
Yeah, it's definitely not the, like, first use case that I would think is, like, a good place for AI to disrupt, but then after you kind of think about it, it's kind of genius in a way too, because the thing about human conversation, like you said, is you go in whatever like, direction, intrigues you, and it's very hard not to do that, and that direction may or may not actually elicit information about the job skills needed for that role. So it's actually can be hard to stay on task in a human conversation about, like, relentlessly focused on the skills needed for that role, whereas an AI doesn't really care about getting to know you and doesn't care about, maybe some of these other things and can stay focused on the skills piece. So it's pretty interesting.
Very interesting.
All right. Well, Jeff, are we entering the era where ask, don't type is the default way we create business documents? Anthropic just rolled out the ability to create and edit Excel sheets, Word documents, PowerPoint slides, and even PDFs directly in chat. It's actually pretty cool. I was watching the video. So Claude now has a private computing environment where it can write up and run code to generate files, complete with charts, analysis, formulas. You can flip formats around, like you can turn a PDF report into a slide deck if you want, or meeting notes into a polished document. It's pretty cool. So basically, like it's almost like having a power EA that's following you around or something and can take all of your like messy, unstructured notes and stuff and turn it into polished actual work product that you can share.
This seems like a pretty cool step forward, and I've used, Claude or ChatGPT to build, "Hey, here's an outline for a deck, like, can you help me iterate on content or a document?" But to actually take, you see some of these where it produces analysis on a set of data, and then you go, "Turn that into a nice document the way a consultant might return it to me, not just a messy chat, so I can send it around to the team." And it does a pretty good job. I mean, it's impressive. Certainly seems like something that would be very valuable for people who produce a lot of documents to be able to just outsource some of that to Claude.
For sure. So the rollout starts with enterprise users, Macs, and team users. And then they also said that pro users will get access relatively soon. I think they said in the next couple of weeks, but I'm not exactly sure if they have a date for that. But their Anthropic is nudging users to start with sort of straightforward tasks. But they do warn that there's potential risks, of course, when giving Claude access to the internet. And so again, seeing Claude lead into their sort of safety first messaging. I love that.
So this seems like, we talk a lot about ChatGPT having advantages over Anthropic in the consumer space, but this feels like a little advantage heading to Claude and Anthropic over OpenAI, at least for now. Nice little win for them to have a little headroom.
Well, I think for now was the important part of your statement. So yeah, for now they'll have this advantage. We'll see if ChatGPT follows suit pretty soon here. But yeah, for us for now, they've got the upper hand.
Yeah, we'll say there was some rumors coming out this week that and it's not confirmed, so I don't want to. I'm not breaking news here, but that Microsoft looking at integrating Claude models directly into Office applications. And of course, one of these key debates about how the future of computing will play out. Am I going to use Claude in Word and not access, not go to Anthropic or Claude or ChatGPT directly and use it in Word? Or am I going to go to Claude and then have it produce a Word file? And kind of two different ways to do the exact same thing, have Claude write a document for you. And it's not clear what that primary interface is going to be. Interesting to see Microsoft laying bets on both sides. I mean, the ability to produce Word files in a Claude and then also have Claude in a Word. I'm very curious to see how we see primary user behavior switching and where people like to see it.
Yeah, I would love to see Claude available in Word. I use the sort of Gemini features available in Docs, and we've talked a lot about how that's not ideal. I would love to have Claude in my Google Doc, right? Claude, like, or ChatGPT in my Google Doc, and I don't right now, so I am forced to use Gemini, but it's definitely not ideal. And so if I could have Claude in a Word doc, I think I might switch back to Word.
I'm going to give you my secret. I just paste the Google Doc into ChatGPT. Just copy and paste the whole thing, throw it in, and then copy and paste output back. It's sad, but it works.
That's all kinds of extra clicks that should be unnecessary. It should be all just embedded and easy for you.
I know. Give me a year and it'll be better, I'm sure. But for right now, that's my hack to getting a better model inside my Google Docs.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about hallucinations, but what if the root cause of AI hallucinations isn't the model's inherent architecture, but just the way we train them? That's the argument in a brand new research paper from OpenAI.
Okay, so I'm actually not super surprised by this to hear it's not the model's fault, it's the human fault. That does not shock me at all. But tell me what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so here's the issue that they found. This was really fascinating. If you think about the way models are trained, or what you might call pre-trained, the big kind of training runs, they're rewarded for getting the right answer, but they give no credit to models that say, I don't know, and a relatively small penalty for getting the wrong answer. And so just that reward incentive structure as they go through the training, it's like, well, it's this, frankly, this is the incentive structure for most humans in life. A confident sounding, but potentially wrong answer is often better than saying, I don't know. And many of us have encountered that that's also true in the real world. And so that incentive structure has been added into their process. And it means that they have been kind of pushed towards sounding confident, even when they don't know, as opposed to being rewarded for admitting the limits of their knowledge and just saying, I'm not sure.
Got it. So basically, like the way we've trained these things is to tell them you should bluff with confidence. Just don't bluff without confidence. But that's better than saying, I'm not sure.
That wasn't really an intentional message, I think, but that is ultimately what the system has done. That's what it's kind of rewarded in the model training behavior. And so we're seeing now in our in our AI systems the exact results you might expect when that's done. And now they propose to fix as well, redesigning evaluation metrics. And that's not crazy to say that, hey, if you confidently say I'm not sure, that's better than confidently saying the wrong thing.
Yeah, this feels like a big change, Jeff, because I think, like, generally, I would rather my AI say I don't know than give me some fake citation, right?
Yeah, and the AI labs have been working very hard on how do we do that? How do we I mean everybody knows that hallucinations are a pretty big problem for lots of use cases. They're the barrier for a lot of people using these things more often. And they've been working on like, do we just can we eliminate wrong answers from the training data? But that's pretty freaking hard to do given the scope of the training data. So if it can really be as simple as like teaching it that it's a good thing to say I don't know when you don't know, maybe that's an easier way. But it's great to see people doing real research and how we eliminate the hallucinations and reduce this because it is, it's like it's one of those things you say, hey, it's a great tool to use, but occasionally it just gets stuff wrong, and that's a pretty big problem.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for users to I mean, I think people already know about, okay, the AI can hallucinate, and so there's some people who are thinking, "Okay, I'll accept that risk," and sometimes it's gonna get it wrong, and that's fine, and then there's some people who are like, "Well, I can't accept that risk, so I don't wanna use it," and I think the important thing is just to actually think about how to mitigate the risks of the hallucination so you can harness the benefits, but And so for me, I think the biggest thing is if you're reading something that's output, ask for its source, ask it to cite its source, right? Where did you get this information? Because a lot of times you'll have it then be like, oh, actually, you're right. I got it from nowhere, right? Like it'll literally tell you that, right? Or like, you're right. It doesn't actually say that. But so if you kind of push it and ask it where it got its information, it's really helpful. But anytime you're relying on output from an LLM as like important research that you're doing for, whatever it might be, I think asking it to show its work and cite its sources is pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. And can tell you how confident it is or isn't in its answer.
Exactly. So Jeff, we talked a lot about copyright law a few weeks, months, I don't
Favorite
even know.
topic. My
Do you
favorite
remember?
topic.
Yeah, one
One
of
of my
our
favorite.
favorite
Yes, I
topics.
love I love copyright law. It's like one of
Yeah,
my old.
so we're getting some information about the sort of answers to some of those lawsuits we talked about. So, question of course that's plaguing people is whether training on copyrighted materials without the author's consent is okay. And it turns out the answer is maybe. Maybe it's okay. And the specific maybe is dependent upon whether or not you paid for the copyrighted material or if it was pirated. So Anthropic actually just agreed to pay out at least, are you ready for this? $1.5 billion to settle a class action lawsuit from authors, which is the first major payout for a copyright suit in the AI industry.
Did you say billion, not million, billion, like,
$1 billion,
you know what's cooler than
$1.5.
$1 million? $1.5 billion. That's what the authors are saying. I'm gonna be watching The Social Network and just enjoying that one.
Oh my gosh, so much money. But so basically, authors discovered that Anthropic had pulled over 7 million pirated books to train its Claude models. And in June, a federal judge drew a super clear line saying training on legally purchased books is okay, falls under fair use under copyright law, but downloaded pirated copies is copyright infringement. And so based on that, now Claude has to sort of pay out this settlement for the 500,000 books that it is paying out for at $3,000 a pop. So they're basically going and compensating those authors for the fact that they use this pirated material.
I'm not great with zeros and math, but I feel like 3,000 times 500,000 is $1.5 billion. So I mean, maths, that's good. But it also feels like this isn't quite the decision we've been waiting for, right? I mean, there's still this question that a lot of authors have of if you train on copyrighted material, is that fair use? And this really says if you didn't buy it and you stole the book, then no. But I think there's still going to be a debate about if you bought the book, if it was a freely available article on the NewYorkTimes.com, but it's copyrighted, is it okay to train on that? And that still seems like at least this ruling did not say it wasn't, but I imagine some authors are gonna try and have another case to question if it is or not.
Yeah, for sure. I think this particular ruling said, the actual output is spectacularly transformative, right? So it's okay that it trained on this data because it didn't reuse the data, it transformed into something else. But if you stole the data, that's not cool. So really the case is about whether or not stealing is okay rather than really being a true copyright question.
But I imagine that phrase "spectacularly transformative" will be questioned by some in the content production industry. That's at least some. I mean, obviously, sometimes it is when you ask a question, you get a simple answer like that's you can't even point to where piece of trained data it's from. But there are other times where the transformation seems less than spectacular, and I imagine there will be some debates about the limits of copyright law and fair use in those contexts that we are not answered in this case. So, but is $1.5 billion that is that? I mean, I feel like for most companies that's like existential. Is this gonna is this gonna kill Anthropic, or is this not a big deal in the end?
Well, I mean, it's hard and weird to say that 1.5 billion is a drop in the bucket, but as you recall, they just raised 13 billion last week. So they got some cash in the bank, and they're valued at 183 billion. So like, is it a financial hit? Yeah, I think $1.5 billion is painful, but it's not like an existential crisis. They're gonna be able to keep on trucking.
I still can't get my intuition to wrap around the amounts of money floating around the AI company space. Like I just like I get it, I kind of know it, but like it's still my intuition's still like, man, that's gonna be deadly. And it's just these guys have a lot of money. It's just kind of crazy.
It's absolutely wild.
All right. Well, while we're on our fun regulatory, copyright, training, legal topics, which I mean, I feel like this is a dangerous area for you and I, Annie, because we enjoy it so much. I'm not sure everybody enjoys it as much as we do. Maybe we'll bring joy to everyone else. Everyone will enjoy it as much as we do. But another group asking a different question, which is what if the internet had a price tag for training data for AI models as opposed to just kind of grab it. I mean, not just don't grab the illegal stuff, but even the legal stuff. What if we could charge you for it?
How would that actually work? I mean, I think we know how we, like, monetize the internet with ads, but how do you do it with AI training? How's this gonna work out?
Well, so there is a brand new initiative called Real Simple Licensing, or RSL. It's a nice little acronym. Got to have an acronym for everything you do, and there it is. Launched by some major web publishers, including Reddit, Yahoo, and Medium. Reddit, a huge source of training data for a lot of the kind of practical answers. You get a lot of Google answers coming straight out of Reddit these days. And think of this as like an upgrade to the robots.txt file. So famously, robots.txt is a file you can put on your web browser or in your web server, and it will tell Google what it can and can't look at an index and what you can and can't crawl. Like for a non-human user, they're supposed to look at robots.txt and obey whatever policies are stated in there, but they don't really have payment terms. But what if we just added some payment terms and said, hey, yeah, you're welcome, Mr. Robot, to grab this content, but it's going to cost you 15 cents or whatever it might be. This is a question that this group is asking. What if we could layer this kind of payment requirement on top of browsing the web for training bots for AI?
Okay, and so then, like, in theory, if I had the ability to do this, that I could literally meter the AI usage and put some decisions around how much I expect to get paid or what I expect to get paid for. Is that kind of the idea?
I think that's right. And I mean, a lot of the details still to be worked out, but there are some real, obviously some publishers in terms of Reddit, Yahoo, Medium. There's some real folks behind this. Eckhart Walther is a leading technical developer, and he was one of the co-creators of RSS, which is one of the most common kind of data infrastructures on the internet. And so I do think this is interesting, and they expect it to work a little bit like music, where there's some sort of negotiated rates. You're not kind of like everybody's putting a little price tag on their individual blog posts. I go to my Medium post and go, oh, this one's really good, 25 cents. But where we'll get some negotiated rates. But this is really interesting because it's both, I think there's just two questions about how data gets used. One is for the training and AI models, and the second is for the real time. Like the New York Times is a little bit upset that you learn how to speak good English by reading a lot of New York Times articles, but they're really upset when you ask about what's going on in the world today and you get basically paraphrased New York Times articles that were in the newsprint this morning. And that's being done in real time web search. And so there's these kind of two layers of this that'll be interesting to see how it plays out. One, pulling the data to train the generic backend model. And the second, like pulling the data because somebody asked about a news story and I'm going to the New York Times and pulling down an article, and I'm going to the Washington Post and pulling down an article, and then I'm going to summarize them for this user. It's a whole different kind of use, maybe a more valuable use. So it'll be really interesting if we could actually do this kind of data layered on top. But of course, everybody worried that if we don't, will there be an incentive for people to keep producing the content that's trained these models if they can't get compensated in some way, shape, or form for the value they're bringing to those models? So it's a really important question. And this is, I think, an interesting first step in exploring at least one possible avenue of solutions.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really important question, and I would say, like, I haven't really heard anybody else suggest an alternative approach. This seems viable. What's the downside? Like, what would a detractor of this approach say?
Well, the big problems with this are going to be, of course, enforcement and adoption. I mean, robots.txt was never really legally a requirement that you do this. Was just a protocol and something that everybody followed and everybody did. It was kind of a great example, perhaps, of industry self-policing, where they just said, "Yeah, well, we'll follow these rules." So but here you need both to follow the rules and then to actually submit payments infrastructure. And so I think there's a challenge of can you actually get it adopted broadly? Can you enforce the payments? Can you track who's actually using this in a real way and what the economics look like that make this work for both sides, right? Like there's a real question of if there's value destruction in terms of the amount of money that the AI companies are charging users. Is it enough to compensate the authors in a way that they might like? Similar to how we saw in music, where they're like, oh yeah, there was a big question when we first came to digital ads. We're giving up physical dollars for digital dimes, right? That was the phrase in digital advertising for many, many years. And it's that question of, do the economics work out in a way that both sides can get comfortable with? We don't know. So I guess we'll find out, and we'll have to follow RSL over the next couple of years to see if this becomes a viable solution for the question of how do we get content creators, compensated for their work.
Well, I think that Anthropic will be able to tell you if you don't pay people, it can cost you $1.5 billion. So maybe whatever you're paying people with this robot pay per click or pay per scrape is going to be a little bit cheaper than $1.5 billion settlement. So
Yeah, that didn't even count the lawyers. I mean, there's a lot of lawyer fees that go to $1.5 billion be a lot of lawyer hours. That's a big lesson.
that's a lot of lawyer hours.
But it is, I mean, it is so fascinating to watch these things unfold, to watch the concept of fair use, which was created in copyright in a pretty pre-internet era, let alone pre, AI and scraping and data usage of this way. So, while we're trying to apply these laws to the modern context and make sense of how we want these markets to function. So, but it is, I mean, we forget that ChatGPT's been out for 3 years. I mean, it's This stuff is happening really rapidly, even for the technology space, let alone for the regulatory or business economic space to catch up. So we're seeing some real innovations, and I think it'll be just fascinating to continue watching how the space evolves. And we'll have more fun, nerdy conversations about copyright law and fair use and piracy and all the fun stuff. It's going to be
Maybe
fun.
next
We
week.
keep it exciting.
Yeah,
Maybe
keep it
next week.
exciting.
Every week, we need some good, fun, legal copyright stories. But for this week, we'll call it a wrap for this episode of What's the AI? And we'll be back next week with more insights, breakdowns, and those just plain old head scratching What the AI moments. Be sure to subscribe and share this episode with any friends or colleagues you know who are trying to figure out what's going on in the world of AI. And if you got a question, a fun prompt, or a story you think we should cover, email us at email@whattheai.fm, and we'd love to feature you on an upcoming episode. So until that, I'll see you next week, Annie.
See you next week.
Ready to expand your AI knowledge? Want to become the go-to AI expert in your organization? Take the next step with Upstart's AI certification for financial services. This comprehensive course simplifies the fundamentals of artificial intelligence for financial services professionals. Both the course and this podcast are brought to you by Upstart, whose leading AI lending marketplace connects millions of consumers to banks and credit unions that leverage Upstart's AI technology to deliver superior credit products, from personal loans to auto loans to home equity lines of credit. If you learned something useful this week, hit subscribe on YouTube or leave us a rating on iTunes or Spotify. Your support can help others discover What the AI. And finally, share your biggest AI questions and insights with us at email@whattheai.fm. We really do read every message, and we do our best to cover them all on the show.